Hello and welcome to video 1 for lecture 2, the way I did not intend to deliver it. In this video, we are going to spend a few minutes talking about variables, assignment statements, and assignment operators. So let's consider a simple program. What we are tasked to do here is write a program that calculates the area of a circle with radius 20 and then prints a specific message followed by the calculated area. And we're going to use 3.14159 for pi. This should be pretty familiar because we just had to do something very similar to this on the homework, except the difference was we didn't use any variables. So what we're going to do is we are going to start by opening up our Python editor. So you can use either Trinkets or idle. For this demonstration, I am going to use idle. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file in my idle editor. So in order to do this, and there are a lot of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you one specific way that is going to use variables. When I do this, there are a couple of pieces of information that I want to save. And anytime I want to save information when I am programming in Python, I am going to use a variable. And a variable is nothing more than a specific word or phrase that we use to save data. Variables contain references to memory, but we're going to talk more about that later, and you'll get more into that as you get to higher level courses as well. For our purposes today, we're just going to know that a variable is going to save information. In order to create a variable, I need to give it some value. In Python, I can't just create a variable with no value, with no data. You can do that in other languages, but in Python, we need to actually give a variable some kind of value. So for my first value, I am going to do the radius. So I'm going to create a comment here. And we discussed comments very briefly, but a comment is just something that is ignored by the Python interpreter. So whatever I put up here next to this pound sign, or octothorpe if you remember the technical term, is I'm just going to put a note to myself about what I'm doing. So I'm going to say assign a radius. And I'm going to create my radius variable. Now, your variable does not have to have a specific name. You could just name it X if you wanted. But I want to use something descriptive because you, in the future, or anyone else looking at your code, is going to want to kind of understand what they're looking at. So I'm going to call my variable for the radius, radius. You could use R, you could use rad, but I'm going to use radius. In order to give this a value, I need to use an equal sign. So this means so far radius is, and then I need to give it a value of some kind. And again, the value could be a number, it could be an expression, we're going to talk about that in a second, or it could be text. Since we already know from our problem here that the radius is going to be 20, I'm going to say radius equals 20. So I've created what we call an assignment statement. So this is an assignment statement with a variable on the left, followed by an equal sign, which means is. This is our assignment operator. And then a value on the right. In this particular case, this is what we call a literal, but we'll come back to that a little bit later in another video. So I have my whole assignment statement. Now note that the variable has to be on the left and our value or expression has to be on the right. So I couldn't do something like 20 equals radius. Python will not understand this. It is looking for a variable on the left and either a literal or an expression on the right. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. And for the next part of my program, I need to actually calculate the area. So in order to do this, I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to start with a variable, and since I'm calculating the area, I'm just going to go ahead and use the word area for my variable. And again, I'm going to use an equal sign. So area is, and this time, I don't have a direct number yet, right? Because as we discovered, the area of a circle is radius times pi, or radius squared times pi. Now there are a lot of different ways you could do this. We're just going to do radius times pi, but you could also use the exponential modifier if you wanted. You could do this a lot of different ways, but we're just going to do radius times radius for simplicity's sake. And then we are going to multiply by pi, which again, we are using 3.14159. So I'm going to go ahead and say area equals, so my area is going to be radius, and again, I'm just going to use this variable, times, remember we need to use an asterisk for times in Python, times radius, times pi, which again, we're using 3.14159. Now, just as a note, if I had used r up here instead of radius, I would need to change this assignment statement so that this reads r times r. Otherwise, Python will not understand what I mean when I say radius, because I haven't told Python what radius is yet. I told it what r is. Just to demonstrate that really quick, let's come over here. You'll recall that we can use the print statement to print out different values and lots of other things. So we can print text using double quotations, and anything we put in here will get printed out. We can also print numbers. We can also print variables. And this, by the way, in idle, this is the Python interpreter. Okay, so this is just going to immediately interpret whatever I put in here. So let's say that I wanted to print out, I don't know, some variable. Let's call it var. Okay. I get an error because I haven't told Python what var is. And it'll say, hey, name var is not defined. And it'll try to say, did you mean something else? Or maybe there's another variable that you've already defined. So it's going to tell me it doesn't know what var is because I haven't told it. So let's create a variable named var. And let's, I don't know, make it the number 5. I hit enter, nothing happens, because again, this is line by line, and I haven't actually told Python to do anything. I've just told it the variable var has the literal value 5 assigned to it. Var is 5. Now if I say print var, it will actually print 5. So with this in mind, let's come over here and write the third line for our program here. So we want to go ahead and display the results. And you will recall that we want to have a specific sentence for this. The area for a circle of radius 20 is whatever the area is. So I'm going to go ahead and use my print function. And the first thing I want to write is actually text, right? So to do this again, I'm just going to use double quotations. The area for a circle of radius. And here we could write 20, but let's say we didn't know it was going to be 20, because again, we used a variable, right? So we could go back and change this to 5 or 700 or something like that. So let's say the area for a circle of radius, I'm going to close my quotes. That means that's the end of my text. And then I'm going to actually print out my radius variable here. Just the same way we did print var. Now to do this, I need to actually add a comma. Just like written language has specific syntax and punctuation and stuff, so we end a sentence with a period or a question mark or an exclamation point. We have to use an apostrophe in certain situations, etc., etc. Python also, every programming language has its own syntax and semantics. Part of that is for the print statement, we have to separate any elements, so text or variables, etc., by a comma. This is literally just Python's way of doing things, just syntax. You do not need a space in between, but I like to put it there so it looks a little bit neater. Just going to give myself a bit more room there. So I'm going to say the circle, the area for a circle of radius, and then I'm going to use my radius variable. And then I want to have is, so I'm going to put is in quotations, and then a comma. And then I'm going to use my area variable. Now note, I haven't actually put any exact numbers in this statement. And don't forget to close your parentheses also. There are no numbers directly written into this statement. We want to use variables as much as possible because using variables allows us to easily change a value. Okay? If I wanted to change my radius to 700 or something like that, instead of having to change it here and here and here and here and everywhere, I only need to change it in one place. And then anywhere I've used this variable, okay, here or here, it will automatically update. So this is looking pretty good. We have print the area for a circle of radius, whatever that may be, is, and then the area. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save as. You could also Control or Command S, or just save, that's fine. And I'm going to save it in Programs, whoops. And we're going to call this radius. I'm going to call it radius 2 because I already have a radius.py. I'm going to click Save. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Run. If you try to run it before you save it, idle will tell you to save it first. So I'm going to click Run. And you'll see, you can ignore this stuff. This is just telling you we're restarting your shell and running your program here. And you'll see the output is the area for a circle of radius 20 is 1256.636. So you'll see my actual output here puts these numbers in. So we have variables and our assignment statement. That's our whole thing here, right? And the assignment operator, which is the equal sign. And that is how we create a program with variables.